Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Digital Green Potential Empowering SMEs Towards Sustainability interactive workshop we have prepared under the RE-CENTRE Eurocluster project. We are CLUJ IT Cluster, an innovative association of both companies and research organizations around the IT value chain. And I am honored today to introduce our facilitator, Mrs. Natalia Ciobanu. She is a Group Environmental Manager at Endava. And Natalia, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Paula. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking your time today to join this webinar. A few things about me. You may have read some of those already in the emails. My background is in environmental sciences. I have a PhD in building resilience to climate change, and I've been doing that using some digital tools, of course. And as part of Endava, although my mandate is to look at improving Endava's environmental performance, it has also given me the occasion to interact and get to know a bit better concepts related to digitalization, because that's what Endava, as part of the CLUJ IT cluster as well, does, right? Digitalization, helping customers digitize their activity, their businesses. Now, today the focus is, of course, on how we can merge those two worlds, digital and green, sustainable environment. Many dimensions to these words, but also how we can innovate at this intersection of these two worlds, right? So the focus will be very much on new ideas, on how those new ideas can work for each and every one of us and of you as participants. New ideas doesn't necessarily need to mean that it hasn't been heard before, that you need to be breaking the ice in terms of a new concept, but more in terms of how this can be new for your business, for your activity, in such a way that it can actually help the business and the activity on the long run. And very importantly, being aware of what we need, right? What we can try and implement in the business, but also being aware of what are the skills, what are the competencies that we may be missing in our company, and we may reach out to maybe other members of the clusters in these partnerships to seek support with, right? Today, as Paula said, the webinar is going to be very interactive. There will be some inputs from my side to help kind of set the stage, get to understand some concepts a little bit better. I'm sure that many of you all are already familiar with some of the things, but we do want to make sure that we're all on the same page and we speak a common vocabulary when we go through the process. So there will be some inputs from my side, but there will also be a very intense interaction with inputs from your side. So there will be regular checkpoints in our interaction, where I will ask you to bring your inputs. That's going to happen by means of Mentimeter, or just asking to open the mic and express yourselves. But also we will have at some point a bit of a group work where you'll be split into working groups to interact, to work with each other, then come back to the plenary and bring your inputs. So different formats for interaction, and we hope this will make it not only engaging for you, but also very hands-on, very practical, where you are not just the consumers of new information, but you are also the producers of new information, helping us all learn together, because that's what it's all about today, right? So this is a core principle, right? We produce the information together, the knowledge together, we experience, we put out ideas there, and we ask questions when we have them. This being said, diving right into the session today. I presented myself, Paula quickly presented herself. Let's see who else is at the table today. So please, let me quickly share the screen with you so that you know what we're asking right now. turn your microphone on. Whoever wants to start, you can start. Turn the mic on, tell us your name, the organization or the company you're representing, and the line of work of yourself and the company. So what does the company do? What do you do in the company?
Hi.
Hi, Mihai.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yes. I'm Mihai Șoșnean. I'm working at WIZ Research and Development. And our company is a SME specialized in complex digital systems and data-driven digital twins.
Very timely. Thank you, Mihai. Do you want to pass the mic to somebody else?
Yes.
Of course. Bigger person.
Hi. Okay, sorry. I'll just jump in so that we make this quicker. My name is Enrico Benco. I'm working for GS4C. It's an Italian SME working on composite material and recyclable composite material. We are at the moment working on a proof of concept project financed by RE-CENTRE to qualify industrial waste as raw material for fiber manufacturing.
Beautiful. Thank you, Enrico.
Hey, my name is Domen Strenchan. I hope you can see me now.
Yes, Domen.
I work for Leinster, and we are a micro company, basically just me. And the main area of business is additive manufacturing. So from resin, also we do some composite, continuous fiber printing, and now with this project we're also entering the recycled materials printing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bogdan Crețu. I'm from Cora SRL, also part of the CLUJ IT Cluster. Also involved in another project regarding green digital transformation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I'm representing RE-CENTRE Cluster, and we're a partner on the RE-CENTRE project together with CLUJ IT. We are a cluster dealing with renewables, energy efficiency, and in general working towards the green transition.
Good morning. My name is Javier. I'm the co-founder and director of Citizense. We are part of the Europod project, and what we do is we take the waste of gardening plastic products, and we design high quality indoors and outdoors planters.
Thank you. Anyone else who did not introduce themselves? I think we've had 6 people so far. Paula, how many people are we? 10, no?
Yes, I don't know if Rosaura can hear us. She did not have the chance to present herself.
Good afternoon. My name is Rosaura. I'm working in Cosvitec. We are a research center in Naples, Italy, and we work in a lot of field of the scientific research, for example, extraction from olive chain waste of bioactive molecules, and we work in the project Remodel with the BIC. And we are opening a platform. We are performing a platform about bioactive molecules that we extract from olive chain waste and other chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosaura. One more person, I think. Or not? Paula, do I have my numbers right? Are we
Hi, I'm Ilenia Miele.
Ah,
Okay, I work with Rosaura for the same industry.
I see, I see. Thank you. Well, welcome. So we have a bit of a sense of who is here around the table. Thank you for that. As a next step, I will ask you to go to Mentimeter and let's explore together a little bit what, yeah, this was supposed to be, yeah, the sustainability question. What sustainability means for you personally. So to do that, you will need to go to menti.com and use this code here. And please let me know if any of you has any difficulties to access it. We have first response in. It's a must-have. Coherence, respect for the future. Continuity. Only path forward. Vision. You may be able to enter more answers if you want to say more than one thing. So there's also this option.
Actually, once we submit, it doesn't let us do any more answers.
Really? Okay, then it was a setting error from my side.
You need to refresh. If you refresh, then it's
Yeah,
fine.
I did, and it told me that I already answered the question.
Oops.
Responsibility is a new word that we see. Okay. Okay. Let's go to the next question. Namely, what does innovation mean to you personally? Creativity, efficiency, disruption, necessity, creativity in practice, adapt to constant change, development, people-driven, keeping an open mind, thrill. Oh, this is a beautiful word. Thrill. Vision again. Yeah. Out of the box thinking. This is very to the point. The out of the box thinking. We'll have the occasion today to try and experiment the out of the box thinking a bit later on. Good. And the third one, same question, but a different word. and concept. Digitalization, what does it mean to you? Especially since we have quite a couple of people here dealing with that as part of their daily life and business.
Have you allowed answers?
Yes, it should be.
Okay, now it lets me.
Efficiency, progress, transformation, simplifying processes, beautiful. Networking, competitive. As a person that also oversees some of the processes in my company, I can definitely say that it's much easier to use a digital tool than to do stuff in Excel, or especially to have to write things by hand. So definitely the simplification of processes is a big thing there. Data silos, beautiful. Ease human connections, great. Information, redesign processes, beautiful. More time for the people. Agility, wider reach. Excellent. Thank you. It does give us quite a feeling of why this is important to us, right? Because we see the different benefits of digitizing, of innovating, and of course of transitioning to sustainability. Now today, and I will put a pause on Menti for now. Today is about how do we marry sustainability and digitalization, and more specifically, how we can use digitalization to make a transition towards a more sustainable future, and maybe even present, why not? And sometimes it's quite easy to, and can be tempting to think that we are very, very small, and the activity of us individually or our companies might not be that significant. And it is precisely in those tempting times that it's good to remember ourselves that we are part of a bigger picture. The bigger picture of what is human society, global human society. And as a society, we are at a point in time right now that we are facing a not very bright perspective on our future. What you see on screen right now is the result of half a century of work. So back in 1970s, there was this group at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that published the book you may be familiar with, the Limits to Growth book. And they looked at the trends in how we as society develop, how we grow, how we exploit our resources, how we generate the waste, and so on. And they looked at different trends, right? And if we were continue to relate with our economy and environment in that way, where would it take us? And what they've come up with is sort of the dotted lines that you see for the different indicators here. They saw that if we continue to do things, to do our industry and manufacturing and economic development overall in that way, we may end up somewhere before 2050 or around 2050, collapsing as a society. Our way of life, what we perceive to be development, may end up in a not very good place. Now, that was one of the first signals that then led to the conversation around the need for sustainable development. And then, of course, there were many criticisms and so on. Very recently, in 2021, we had somebody actually checking, right, what happened. So there were these scenarios proposed by the guys at MIT in 1970s. So did we actually end up behaving in that way? How far are we from the estimated trajectory? And the solid lines that you see here are actually the evolution compared to what was anticipated to happen. So the picture that is being painted is that we may be heading, unless we take some very drastic measures, we may be heading to a place where economy and society would look very, very different and very uncomfortable compared to our ways that we got used to. Now, to make this change, United Nations, you may have heard about the Millennium Development Goals and more recently about the Sustainable Development Goals. There are the different meetings, the Rio or the Rio 25 and so on. The most recent one in 2015, they put together what is known as the Agenda 2030, things that we need to focus on and do to prevent a collapse, to prevent undesirable evolution in the way that we function and exist as a society. So this global initiative to create a more equitable, prosperous, and sustainable world for everyone focused on some key areas like climate action, acknowledging that there is a big challenge with that, acknowledging the need for living in cities and developing our communities that are more sustainable, focusing on health improvement, focusing on clean water and sanitation, poverty eradication, hunger alleviation, quality education for all, and gender equality promotion, right? And to help move our efforts from a general kind of high-level area of focus to something more concrete, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals were developed. They are pretty much our very concrete conceptualization of what we need to do to live in a sustainable world. And each of these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, in turn, has 8, 12 measurable targets. And the idea is that if we pay attention to the goals, and if we look at the targets and make sure that we try to achieve them, that we improve them, we follow the indicators, if we achieve the targets, we are likely to achieve the goal. If we manage to achieve all these goals by 2030, we can have some level of confidence that our future will look brighter and will be more sustainable. A very recent, like 2023 review of the state of the world related to these different objectives shows us that we are not there. On some SDGs, there was some progress. On some others, there was stagnation. And on some of these goals, there was actually a regression. It's not a very good sign. Key message being, we need to do better. And the need to do better is obviously not just with the COP28 participants and the ministries. It is very much up to each person that has a role at home, but also a certain role in an organization, in a company. It's about how we integrate sustainability in the business strategy of each of our companies and SMEs. Right? More concretely, or closer to home, which is in the European Union, following on the Agenda 2030, EU has developed a package of policies and strategies to support and to drive the change in EU countries and in the neighboring countries as well. So the EU Green Deal is, again, an ambitious initiative by the EU this time to transform the economy into a greener and more resilient and inclusive society. And it has 4 main objectives. Now, it looks at making sure that as a society in the European Union, we are net zero by 2050. So we limit the emissions, we further reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. That we focus on improving the quality of our air, water, and ecosystems. We boost sustainable economic growth, and that happens while we're having a just transition for the less advantaged communities, and that we create green jobs and that we foster innovation, right? Now, this package contains 12 sets of strategies, policies, funds, tools. The QR code here will take you to European Council's page where each of these are briefly and nicely presented. But the key takeaway from this part is that what was initially, or years ago, what was desirable, when it comes to European countries, some of those things slowly but surely become law. Things like the due diligence directive, or the greenwashing directive, or the sustainability reporting directive. They put pressure on very much on companies also to do things, to reduce emissions, to become more sustainable. Of course, most of those focus on major companies, not on SMEs. However, as SMEs, our customers many times are also bigger companies. So because we are part of an ecosystem of companies, some laws might not have to directly apply to us, but we will feel that pressure through the demand that we see from our customers many times. With this quick intro, let's go back to Menti. And let me ask you quite quickly, do you think that your organization plays a role in the transition to a more sustainable society? Some of you think it's to some extent, some of you think it's a small role. There is somebody who thinks that the company plays quite a big role. I see. Let's make this question a bit more concrete. Let's think about some examples. More specifically, what are some examples of what your organization, your company, your SME currently does to integrate sustainability in the business model? There are some initiatives related to circular economy. This is a very interesting one that I would like to learn more about. But maybe you can, who wrote this, maybe you can tell us directly, is it about initiatives within the company, or is it about something that the company does as part of the business model outside the country, outside the company, like as for the market? If you would like to share with us. No, okay. So implementing projects with proactive actions, design products using sustainable criteria, validating circular solutions, very interesting. We see projects related to the valorization and reduction of wastes. Yeah. Photovoltaics, recycled materials for FFF, 3D printing, paperless business. Manufacture locally. One-stop shops, seminars, partnerships with agencies to promote actions. Project related to the waste valorization, biopackaging in general, about circular economy. What I see is that some of these things refer to practices we do internally, and some of these refer to actually what we do as offering for the market, right, for other actors out there. Through digital twins, we empower companies to reduce the environmental impact through insightful analysis and innovative solutions. Beautiful. Thank you. And I will build on the empowering companies to reduce environmental impact for my next input, which is the greenhouse gas emissions. Now, we saw that sustainability is not just emissions. We saw that it's much more than that. It's also the social, not just the environmental side. But for the sake of an exercise and going into some more concrete examples, we will take and focus a bit more from this point on today on the greenhouse gas emissions. And why is it such an important topic? You may have heard about a lot in the news about the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. And there is a very strong emphasis on needing to limit the average global warming to 1.5 degrees compared to pre-industrial levels. There has been more and more talk actually about us being very close to missing this target. And our next best chance is to limit the warming to the 2 degrees compared to pre-industrial levels. And this is an important aspect actually, because there is a difference, right? There is a difference in terms of the impacts that we may see in the world from the climate change if the climate gets a bit warmer or a bit more warm, right? And here are some figures just to give you a flavor of what that impact may mean and to help hopefully give you an understanding that a slight increase in temperature doesn't mean a slight increase in the impacts. On the contrary, any extra degree results in an exponential increase in potential consequences. And the idea of limiting the warming to 1.5 or as low as possible is to prevent even more severe disruptions, because if we miss even the 2 degrees Celsius and then we go to the 3 degrees or 4 degrees, the consequences are going to be more and more severe. So here are some examples. Right now, we know that there are already people that are exposed to severe heat at least once every 5 years. In the scenario where the global warming is going to increase to 1.5 degrees, the percentage of population that's going to be exposed to these sort of threats is going to increase by 14%. If the temperature increases by 2 degrees, then the percentage of population exposed will be 37% higher than at this point in time, right? So it would be 2.6 times worse under the 2 degree scenarios compared to 1.5. And on the 4 degree scenarios, I'm not even mentioning that. There are millions of people that rely on fisheries, on marine fisheries for their survival, let alone economic development. And the decline is expected to be quite bad under the 1.5 degree scenario, but it's going to be 2 times worse under the 2 degree scenario, and so on and so forth. What this means that at this point in time, we need to make sure that we are limiting global warming to as small of a degree as possible. And to do that, we actually have to reduce emissions as a society and as part of the society also, whether as people or as companies. By the way, if you're interested in more climate-related facts, the reliable ones, I encourage you to go to the NASA website, climate.nasa.gov. They have very interesting and clear and simple explanatory videos and materials to help explain some of the phenomena. In this specific video, what it shows is that industrialized countries in the global north, that is in our region, these countries are home to major CO2 emission sources. We are producing more than any other country in the southern hemisphere of the global of the globe. But the thing is that the emissions, they don't stay in the north hemisphere. they travel, right? Because it's gas. It becomes part of the atmosphere and it travels and it affects the climate globally. So what we need to do then is to reduce emissions. They are now still on the increasing trend, and we need to put in serious efforts to reduce those. How that can be done? A metaphor very commonly used for the greenhouse gases that accumulate in the atmosphere is that of water accumulating in a bathtub, right? So if we want to reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and then minimize the global warming, minimize the greenhouse effect, we have two leverages, right? Two levers. One lever is to remove as much from the greenhouse gas from the atmosphere as possible. And that can be done by improving soil quality, making sure that the carbon is stored in the roots of plants, forestate, reforestate, tree planting and conservation of forests, of course, and of other ecosystems that help capture naturally the carbon from the atmosphere, maybe even increase these areas, and protecting the oceans where, again, because of the ecosystem in the waters, oceans are also huge sinks for greenhouse gas from the atmosphere. So trying to increase the removals in the same way that we would make sure that more water is drained from the tube, right, from the bathtub, in the same way we could help to remove the greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. But just like with the bathtub, if our water drains slowly from the sink while the tap is turned on to the maximum, what happens is that we may try to, it's like taking the water with a cup from a sinking ship, you know, when the water is coming actually in huge volumes into the ship. So it's the same thing. If we try to remove, but at the same time, we put out there many emissions, we are not going to solve the problem. We will continue worsening the problem. So another important lever, and maybe the most important, is to actually reduce emissions. Turn the tap a little bit off, no, or not totally off, but reduce the gases that are put out into the atmosphere. And this means reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, reducing deforestation, reducing essentially the putting out of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere through our processes, industrial processes, manufacturing processes, and transportation, and so on. Now, how that is being done? To reduce, we first need to measure, right? You can't improve what you cannot measure. That's the basics of management. But how do we measure? And then to be able to reduce. There is a very important document, which is the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Corporate Accounting and Reporting Standard, that provides for the companies, whether they're big or small, the requirements and the guidance necessary to prepare a corporate level greenhouse gas emissions inventory. So an inventory is just like, you know, an inventory of expenses and revenues, or of, assets. It's looking at the sources. What are the sources in our company that cause emissions? And to help structure this, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol has put forward this proposal, quickly summarized in this graph here. So the recommendation is that every company looks at the emissions from three big categories, three big scopes, we call them. There is a scope 1 emissions, which are emissions caused directly by the company. For example, if I use natural gas to warm or to heat my my offices or my manufacturing plant, or I'm using gas, you know, to fuel my furnaces, or coal to fuel my furnaces, I'm essentially burning that fuel on my premises, and I'm generating directly the emissions. In the same way, if I have company cars that are running on diesel or on gasoline, while they are running, they are burning the fuel and they're causing directly the emissions. So this would go under scope 1 emissions, as an example. Then we have scope 2 emissions, which are indirect, meaning that as a company, I am doing something to cause emissions indirectly, but I don't have direct control on the emissions. A common example here is the use of electricity, right? So I do not burn the coal to produce my own electricity most often. I buy the electricity from somebody else who produces it, and somebody else, a utility company, burns the coal or the natural gas. My only leverage in that situation is to consume more or less electricity. Or maybe even, since we have people in photovoltaics and energy transition here, maybe to switch to renewable electricity altogether. In this way, I'm not causing any more greenhouse gas emissions. And then there is the scope 3 category, the biggest one and the most challenging one. Scope 3 are emissions that are caused in my value chain. There are upstream emissions that are produced generally by my supply chain, and downstream emissions that are produced by how my products or services are being used. Concrete example, when I am buying goods, a laptop, for example, or I'm buying an assembly line, right? A capital good or another operational expense, I am not directly generating emissions, but for that good to be produced, the producers of those goods and services, they have generated emissions, right? So my only choice then, I cannot even switch so much from renewable or non-renewable. I cannot control how the goods are manufactured, but I can control if I buy from that producer or I buy from somebody else. And in many cases, buying from one supplier or the other doesn't really mean that I'm going to reduce emissions, because many times I don't even know how many emissions were generated to produce those goods and services that I'm buying. Other examples here are transportation and distribution. So I may buy, let's say, raw material to assemble my equipment, for example, if I'm in an assembly business, and those raw materials to be transported from a warehouse to the gates of my facility, there were trucks that were being used, right? And even if it's not my company trucks, but it is a supplier, a transport services supplier that is producing, that is giving me that service, some emissions were still generated just to transport my raw materials to my gates. So these type of emissions are still accounted as part of my supply chain emissions, my upstream emissions. Other categories here include leased assets, employee commuting, business travel, waste that I generate in operations, and other fuel and energy related activities. Then there is a downstream section of emissions, which has a lot to do with how I design my product or my service. If I design my product to be easily recyclable, then the emissions generated from end-of-life treatment of my product are going to be lower, right? Because materials will be recycled, they will re-enter the stream, the economy, and they will not end up somewhere decomposing and emitting and generating emissions. If, however, my product is very complicated and it's difficult to disassemble, probably nobody will disassemble it, and it will end up in the landfill somewhere generating emissions, or maybe even incinerated and generating emissions. The same goes for the use of sold products. So if I am, for example, I'm producing a laptop and I'm thinking that, okay, I need to make this laptop more energy efficient, that it will consume 2 kilowatts of electricity instead of 4 kilowatts of electricity, then it also means that by how I design the product, I make sure that whoever uses my product is generating fewer emissions. And when thinking about the downstream, about the use of my products or the processing of my products, I also need to account for those types of emissions. And those emissions are much more directly connected to how I design my products in the first place, right? Now, to do the accounting, as you can imagine, it's not the easiest thing to do because it requires, first and foremost, to have visibility over data and to have visibility and reliability or reliance on the information that I receive from my suppliers in many cases. And this is not an easy thing to do. If you take into account also that when we talk about greenhouse gas accounting, it's not just the CO2, it's not that the carbon dioxide emissions, but there are actually several categories of emissions that are measured in carbon dioxide equivalent, then you realize that access to data and processing of this data is even more important because it becomes a very difficult thing to do manually. Throwing back to the net zero by 2050 for European Union countries and to the whole 1.5 degree limiting global warming story, the mission then is to reduce emissions by actually using things that are not generating greenhouse gas emissions. So it's switching from fossil fuel to renewables. It's making sure that our manufacturing processes and the manufacturing processes of our suppliers are more and more energy efficient, so that in the end, by 2050 at the latest, our companies manage to reduce the total emissions by at least 90%. And then unabatable emissions, 5 to 10% of our emissions could be offset by other means. But we do need to focus very much on reducing total emissions from our operational control, from our supply chain, and from our downstream value chain. And this is a big, big challenge, no? Because it means that for scope 1 and 2 emissions, we need to switch to sources of energy that are carbon-free. And for scope 3 emissions, we need to do many things because commonly, scope 3 emissions from supply chain and downstream value chain account for 60 to 90%, sometimes even 99% if you're a service-only company, 99% of a company's total footprint. And while we may be thinking that, yeah, if I choose not to do it, that's it, it's not a problem, I'm gonna not reduce my greenhouse gas emissions because it's too expensive, too complicated, no data, and so on and so forth. This is not a very healthy way of thinking because we are somebody's suppliers. So somebody who is usually a bigger company than us, our clients or whom we rely to make sales and hopefully have more sales in the future, our clients will need information from us and will need to see that we are reducing our emissions so that they can reduce their own emissions. We are very strongly interlinked, and it is both a curse and a blessing because it is an opportunity. When we start putting in the efforts to reduce our emissions, this will be a strong selling point and an added value for our own customers. With this, we go back to the Mentimeter. And the next question in the Menti is looking now at the understanding of greenhouse gas emissions and the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, manufacturing, and so on. Do you think your organization could play a bigger role in the transition to a more sustainable society? Generally, I think there is a consensus that to some extent, each of us can play a bigger role. Let's look at some examples. What else, compared to what you're already doing, what else could your organization do to make this transition? Something that you're not yet doing, but you could do. Use more sustainable materials. Involve more employees. Very, very good point. Yeah. Find a lot of money to implement first-hand validated solutions. Good. Valid point. Choose sustainable providers. Push supply chain for more sustainable approach. Become more transparent with our own partners. Yeah. Increase smart working to reduce transport. Work with policymakers to promote sustainable practices. Use more renewable utilities. Yeah. The greenhouse gas accounting, reporting and then reduction process is quite challenging. It's, as I was saying, it's not an easy thing to do. And one of the biggest challenges that we have found in our experience in Andava, but also interacting with other companies, is that having visibility of our own consumption, but also having visibility over more sustainable alternatives and being able to rely on the claims of being a more sustainable alternative is a very, very big challenge. Also, not only reducing emissions, but even knowing what is the footprint, for example, of a laptop that I am buying is still not an easy thing to do, because sometimes suppliers, they don't know themselves. Our suppliers, they don't know themselves. So we need to be able to access that information. In other cases, let's talk about electricity or heating now. Sometimes even the meters that we are using, they are manual. They are not connected to, in some of the buildings, they're not connected to some sort of a smart building management system. So there's a lot of hand processing happening. The invoices that we're receiving from our utilities companies sometimes are just a non-readable PDF. So access to data many times is quite a big thing. And what we have tried to do, for example, is to try to find some ways to automate these resources, these data collection processes. But also, we try to identify and to actually push with our suppliers as well to give us footprint data for the products that we are buying. Now, when it comes to footprint data of the products, there needs to be not just the energy consumed by the manufacturer to give us the laptop, but there needs to be a full life cycle assessment of the emissions generated from the stage of raw material extraction, processing, and all the different processing stages that have happened before arriving to my supplier, right, to give it to me. And on this, what we realized is that there are quite some opportunities out there that are given by digitalization, the digital tools and technologies that are available out there that could help us in this process. One, it's not anymore emerging really, because it's a real thing now, but it is under continuous development, of course. One such digital technology is the Internet of Things. It has many implications. And I'm sure that many of us know already what IoT is, but again, just to make sure that we're on the same page, IoT, or Internet of Things, is a network of interconnected devices or objects, like meters, for example, that are embedded with sensors, with software and connectivity, and that can help us, by virtue of this connectivity, collect and exchange data and act upon the data to achieve specific goals or functions. So we had some pilot projects in our ecosystem, so to speak, where people were using IoTs to monitor or to digitize some data that was otherwise an analog data, right? And in that way, we could have more automated data collection dashboards, data analytics in the dashboards, and we could take decisions or monitor how the different decisions to save energy was reflected in the data, for example. And also the fact that they are automated meant that the risk of error from processing data that comes from human interaction was minimized a lot. What we have on this slide are some examples of where such technology can bring an added value. And that would be, when we look at water flows, when we look at water consumption, when we look at wastewater consumption or wastewater generated, we look at the cloud storage, since we're moving a lot of the data processing in the clouds now, not on premises. Things related to, of course, energy consumption and so on. Another technology, and then looking at the greenhouse gas accounting, it gives us and opens the space, in which I'm not going to dive in now, but opens the space to look into where else could I integrate this digital technology to help me gather more automated, better quality data from Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emission sources. And I'm going to leave the question open here. Another digital technology is the digital twin. Now, I know that for some people, I'm now preaching to the priest or preaching to the preacher, because we have people working on digital twin, right? It's essentially creating a virtual replica of a physical asset or a manufacturing process that allows to simulate, test, and optimize some of the processes without physical trial and error. And we can apply this concept both to a company, so how the processes work within my company, how many emissions I'm generating as part of my operations, but it can also be applied to a product. So when I'm looking at the life cycle assessment, life cycle emissions of a product, if I have, for example, a digital twin, then I can look at the different sides or different parts in the product that generate emissions and try to see where efficiencies could be gained, where improvements could be gained from implementing certain metrics, right? So creating digital twins allows for kind of a safe simulation of different optimization or emission reduction processes or policies. And then the third technology is the blockchain. Now, it's this decentralized, distributed ledger technology that helps to record and store data in a way that it's reliable. It also saves the kind of confidentiality side, but it also builds trust in the users of that data down the line. Let's say in a couple of suppliers or a couple of customers down the line, or a couple of suppliers upstream. And the big advantage of it is that it can help ensure transparency, but also security of different transactions across the network. A potential area of use for this technology that has been already slowly implemented in some cases is to ensure supply chain transparency. Again, when we are buying a product, it doesn't mean that it was directly manufactured, right, the raw materials extracted and the product manufactured by my supplier. There are a series of other suppliers in that chain, and I don't know what's happening there. So I may not have access to the data from third or fourth tier supplier there. And having a blockchain technology integrated into the supply chain would help with transparency and visibility. But also, it's not about the supply chain only, it's also the value chain downstream. So I could be able to provide visibility to third, fourth, fifth tier users of my products if I'm working in an assembly line, or I'm not selling a full ready-to-use product. And very important, the issue of data reliability. So blockchain can give me confidence that people haven't mingled with the data to distort it before it reaches me. And here is where those conversations that I left open with a question mark will now go to you. And in the next 10 minutes, the invitation is that we split in 3 working groups. And each working group, one will be on IoT, another one on digital twin, and another one on blockchain. Each group will need to think based on your experience, on your understanding, and especially based on a specific situation and your specific business. How can this technology help your company, help your business measure, report, and reduce emissions? So in the next 10 minutes, what we ask you is to think of some examples. They may be real, what is already happening, or they may be potential. To do that, I will ask Paula to help us with splitting into groups. But before that, are there questions about the tasks?
Well, if there are no questions, I will open the rooms and we'll see you back in 10 minutes.
You will be assigned randomly, 10 minutes discussion, some examples, and we see each other in 10 minutes back.
I don't know if Rosaura can hear us and if you would like to join your room. Okay, so I will tell everyone when there is 1 minute left.
Mm.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Rosaura. Thank you for letting us know. How are we with time, Natalia?
Okay.
Okay.
So 10. Yeah. We have 25 more minutes, no? More or less, 20-ish. Ceea ce înseamnă că lucrează încă vreo 10 minute. Grupele sunt destul de mici, deci probabil că o să fie inputurile.
Yeah.
Yes, so the inputs are probably going to be quite quick.
Okay. Yeah, well, I also believe that because the groups are not big, they would not need extensions. So they started at 4:05. Maybe we can come back at 4:15.
Yeah.
I also see that strangely we almost have a division by country. So the digital twin is from Bulgaria, the IoT is from Romania, and the blockchain is Italy and Spain. So
what I'd probably do, depending on how much time people need to give their inputs from the work groups, is maybe I'll just skip the last Menti.
Okay.
So then we have space for Q&A.
Yes, it is a very challenging and I don't know. It's challenging and like threatening and topic, you know, for each of us. Like at individual level, it is becoming already because we start feeling it. But this also comes with the opportunity of becoming more responsible. So
I think there are several issues actually that are happening at the same time and not easy to deal with. One is that we already see the effects. Actually, the effects are happening quicker than scientists have anticipated 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So the things are happening very quickly. The second thing is it is a complex thing, right? So it's not like there is problem A, solution is B. There is problem A, and then there are all these solutions that are interlinked. And it's important that all of these things happen and all these different actors do their part. And we are only one piece of puzzle in this chain. And it's a sort of, you know, what if I do a lot, but it's still not enough because others don't do? And it's demoralizing.
on one hand. The other hand, if I do something and the other people around me do something and everybody does something.
Yes, yes. And here comes the third thing, which is for me to do something. If I'm a business, no, at this point, when taking action is still a bit costly, by the way, speaking of the example there that I need money, no, it is a bit of a cost now. If you look at the very short term, if you look at the long term, like 15, 20 years, it is an investment because if you prepare your processes now, you'll be more resilient in the future. But it's just where do you, especially for SMEs, now, where do you get the money now? Where do you get the resources now to do that? And if I'm spending money to do now, it means that I need to increase the cost of my, or the price of my product or service, while my competitor is still selling it cheaper, right? So there is a very practical, also financial problem for the small ones. And then last but not least is in terms of the challenge is it knowing, is it enough? Am I doing the right thing? Right? Sort of data, because it's so complex, and even to do the greenhouse gas accounting, there is no one single way to do it correctly. There is guidance. Then the methodology, it's quite complex. And there are not many people in these companies that are equipped with the knowledge, experience, and competence to help them do that. So like, where do you find, not the money, where do you find the people to help you do that or to implement? So I've seen this to be the bigger challenges. Huh? And then we had that event 2 weeks ago with youth policymakers in Spain. And some of them knew about the big issue of mental health with young people and eco-anxiety. Many of them were totally oblivious, like, what? The studies also show there is a very strongly increasing number of people suffering from anxiety related to how healthy the environment is going to be for them when they're adults, when they want to have families for their children. Like, what is the world going to look like in 20 years?
Yes, actually, young people and teenagers are surprisingly aware of the issue. Maybe not so much here, but you start seeing them here too, especially
no, we have a lot.
Western Europe.
But we have them also in Romania quite a lot.
Yes.
It's just that we don't hear them, no, because there
Yes.
isn't really a structure where they can make their voice heard.
Okay.
But I also have friends that are not that young even, and they're suffering from anxiety.
Okay, so let's hear from the groups. What do you say?
Yes.
I'm closing the rooms now. So they have 60 seconds to return. I see the conversations are going, are intense. All the mics are on and everybody's talking. So let's hope this is a good sign.
Welcome back.
We are still waiting for 2 breakout rooms to return. Everybody's back now, Natalia.
Lovely. Welcome back. How was it?
It was interesting.
And short.
Short, no? Yes. Yeah, this is one of the things I forgot maybe to mention in the beginning, that this is not supposed to be an exhaustive event where suddenly you become enlightened after 1.5 hours about all the problems, but rather a conversation starter, giving you the feeling of there is something that I can build on, no, from here point. Good. Let's hear some examples from the conversations that you had. And maybe we can start with the IoT group.
Okay. So me and Bogdan spoke about what our company does. And we came to the conclusion that the IoT and the digital twin software are interconnected. So the digital twin uses the IoT in general, like all the sensors and everything. So as an example, we have a customer. Right now we have a customer that is involved in furniture manufacturing. And we developed a digital twin playground for them that involves creating a visual representation of their wood processing operations. And with the help of this visual representation, we can simulate different scenarios related to waste management.
Mihai, can I ask you, in this specific example, where were the sensors installed? So what were the things that were integrated with sensors so that it feeds the information to the digital twin?
The manufacturing machines. So those sensors measure the time spent on producing a piece of furniture, the machine consumption, and with all this data, we simulate different scenarios, and this data helps us analyze and optimize different manufacturing processes.
That was a signal. Quick question. managed to identify some possible actions that could be implemented to reduce or to optimize the consumption? And if yes, what did it help optimize? What did it help reduce?
An example. Okay, let me think about it.
Well, in general, IoT is used in digitalization projects to monitor and optimize utilities consumptions. So by and large, that would be my own answer.
Like electricity or some other ones as well?
Exactly, electricity, gas consumption, water consumption.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, electricity consumption, yeah.
This is interesting because this is also one of the pilot projects that we had kind of in preparation in Endava, which is in many of our offices, we do not own the offices. We are leasing them from a landlord, right? And the landlord, sometimes they have meters dedicated, electricity meters dedicated for Endava. In some other cases, it's a building meter, and then they just split it by floor, not by actual consumption. So what we're trying to do is to see, there are these, how do you call it, the plugs that are smart plugs that you plug into the socket where the electricity enters Endava premises.
Okay.
In that way, we can know exactly how much is Endava consuming by looking at these smart sockets, right? How much electricity, where the landlord is not able to tell us how much electricity Endava is actually using, we would be theoretically able to know, to measure how much electricity actually Endava consumes. This is just the input from my side, that the IoT can take the shape of putting a sensor in a process that is happening already, but then there are also these different devices that can help give more visibility where it's more difficult to access it. Yeah, there are different solutions. Thank you. Anything else that you wanted to add, Mihai, Bogdan?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
The digital twin team, what would be some use cases that you...
So we have discussed and internally we don't see any real use cases apart from what you just mentioned, like monitoring water usage stuff, and then making some scenarios how we can mitigate and lower these consumptions. However, I've been in contact with some university professor, and he showed me the whole process they did for a customer when they were purchasing a new robot assembly line for automotive industry, where the end customer wanted to see the digital twin before ordering the line. So they had to put all the robots, all the equipment inside the first mechanical design, then make the movements and everything. And the end result was a very, very, very complex project with a lot of data variables that, I mean, they knew how their other lines perform, so they were expecting to see how this new line will perform, but they just still wanted to do this like digital twin to see how this all works. And the one thing that became very apparent is that you need a really good source of data, very reliable, accurate data. So this all connects to what already previous guy said. So IoT plus the blockchain is the first building blocks before even going to the digital twin, if you want to do it the right way, because companies can really like present the data the way they want. So yes, that's the topic we were discussing.
Yeah, and from your experience, or who has the, Mihai, I think you were mentioning, the digital twin experience. Is it easier to build a digital twin for a product, or is it for a company, or is it for a process?
Usually it's easier to make a product. Use digital twin for manufacturing products.
For manufacturing. Mm-hmm. And is it a digital twin of the product or the manufacturing process for the product?
Of the manufacturing process.
Mm-hmm. I see. Mihai, can you share with us some other examples of digital twin or use cases to improve efficiency or reduce pollution? From your experience?
We just used it on the manufacturing process of wood. That's all for now.
Okay. One thing I can share here then on the digital twin is quite an emerging trend around the airlines, because you may know that the airline companies, when airplanes cannot really run on renewable energy for now, except for the sustainable aviation fuel, which is still questionable now. So then the focus there is really how the design of the plane, how the different elements in a plane can be made more efficient, so that actually the consumption of what eventually ends up to be a fossil fuel that cannot be easily replaced can be reduced as much as possible. So in that case, the digital twin is produced for a whole product.
For designing the product.
Yes, for the entire product, which is the airplane, and then looking at the different elements within that product that can be, within that object that can be optimized to reduce consumption or reduce emissions.
I see.
Just to give you another example.
Thank you. Yeah.
Only for the product, and I think I've seen some new developments also for automotive, but I need to look more into that. Now, what I would say here is that I would be really curious also to see a digital twin of a laptop, for example, because we all need to use laptops and devices. But also, you know, when it comes to buying a thing like an oven or a furnace or some other things that we use in our manufacturing process or in our businesses, I would like to see that there is an optimization of their carbon footprint. And I think to be able to do that, companies, manufacturers, and sometimes several tier suppliers would need to have sort of a digital twin to be able to disassemble, reassemble, and see where things can be improved at the product level as well. And the third group is the blockchain group.
Shall I go for this? And okay, so we discussed about something because conceptually, did I mention vision a few times in the answers? So the vision is that blockchain could allow eventually a transition to access over ownership economy model, business models to raw material level. So conceptually, you have something that will follow up the raw material all the way from cradle to cradle. So working on fully recyclable materials will allow you to follow up the material throughout the full life cycles and back to the original manufacturer, to the original producer. So this is so far, blockchains have only been implemented to monitor and to check the supply chain from the raw material extraction to the manufacturing level, but they haven't been following up the product from the manufacturing to the end of life. So this is what could be implemented, and then eventually allow for a transition where the raw material itself is being only a service and is not a good to be sold. So the example was for minerals transformed to fiber, and then the fiber going into composite, and then the following. So the original mineral being considered stored into an object, into a product, rather than being sold and lost.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what blockchain could allow for. And then through smart contracts, also conceptually, you just lend and pay for the service, and you keep paying for the service until the material goes back to the original cradle and gets recycled, and then at that stage you stop. So all the elements of the transformation supply and value chain will keep paying until the material is in circle. So that will also foster a cultural transition and a cultural shift toward responsibility. And this is why responsibility was one of the words I mentioned at the beginning, toward responsibility toward raw materials. Did it make sense?
An example, Enrico, and I would even add to this, saying that it's not only about the origin in terms of greenhouse gas emissions that were produced by at the different stage of processing or using or disposing of that material, but there are also other sustainability related credentials that could be integrated. Things like, was there child labor used at any point in the processing? Was there any modern slavery instances? Things related, speaking of due diligence and the new upcoming regulation on due diligence, whereby we as companies will need to kind of make a due diligence of our suppliers to make sure that they, you know, they don't break the law, that they're compliant with the applicable regulations on whatever activities they're doing, right? It's quite difficult to go to tier 10 suppliers to make sure that everybody in your supply chain actually does what they claim to be doing. So this sort of technology can be applied also to proof check or to vet other sustainability claims, not only the greenhouse gas emissions. Or
Indeed. And also something you mentioned before about life cycle assessment. I mean, if each raw material comes with a blockchain that integrates all the energy that has been used, the raw material, the water that has been consumed. So that will make everything a lot easier, because so far one of the biggest challenges is to get manufacturers to disclose data about what is the recipe and what is the raw materials they are using, what is their real life cycle environmental impact. So because they're very close on this. So having each raw material coming with their own ID and their own blockchain, that will make the whole process a lot easier. So the final product will be just the collection of all the information that come with all the raw materials and that have been included in that product and so on.
Yeah. Thank you, Enrico. Anything that anyone wants to add to this point on blockchain? No. Okay. Thank you very much for the group work. As we are approaching the end of the webinar today, I'd like to ask you, what is one thing that you are leaving with after today's session?
There is a huge potential for companies like small companies to really cater and service the bigger companies to actually implement all this stuff. Because bigger the company, more rigid the system, less resources and less attention to all these details. And yeah, they can be corrupt as well. So
Thank you.
Talking about the data, right?
I think, can I just add something? I think, as you said, we are a small group of visionaries with a different mindset, and the provocation about big money to implement a validated solution is also because we need a cultural shift. We need to promote a cultural shift where the economic backflow of money is not the only priority of if I can, in 30 seconds, I'll give you just a very quick example of what is the corruption that was mentioned, not on data, but on the concept. Like sharing economy business models are fantastic tools, are fantastic opportunities, but then what happened in a project that has been recently implemented in Italy, a company bought a huge number of bicycles, and for small price, and each bicycle needed only 20 minutes of usage to be pay itself and make the profit. So after 20 minutes, they didn't care anymore about the bicycles. So conceptually, it was a massive speculation on a sharing economy concept. So all the bikes got thrown away just because they made the profit that the company needed, and that was it. So the control on business models is something that has to be implemented as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
In my case, I enjoyed complementing the theoretical part, the ideas that you show us, Natalia, with the discussion with Enrico and Ilenia. It was very interesting to complement both sides. And yeah, I think there's lots to do. Yes, as Enrico said, there are many things that can go wrong, and there are many things that we can do in the right way. So let's keep working on the positive, on the correct way. Yes.
Thank you, Javi. Elena, Alexandra, Bogdan, any takeaway for you?
Well, for me, the main takeaway is not going to be as concrete, but obviously technology is the future. And in this day and age, data is everything. It's literal gold. So as long as we have professionals that know how to use it and we have instruments that help us implement it, then that's what we're aiming for.
Thank you.
In collaboration with our clients, we definitely see a high degree of interest towards digitalization. I believe that many, if not most companies in Romania are still at the initial stages of digital transformation, but I remain confident that the persistent interest will lead to significant results.
Thank you, Bogdan. So if there are no other inputs, I will leave you just with one message. From what I'm seeing on the sustainability side in the market is that the pressure is increasing. There will be more and more demand for sustainability-related solutions. As you said, Alexander, as well, data is everything, and the capacity to turn data into actionable insights is even more important. There is, at this point, there are many solutions that are trying to go out there in the market when it comes to decarbonization, reducing environmental impact, improving sustainability credentials for different companies, but there are no established solutions, which means it's also an opportunity to think, to pilot, to trial things, and to put it out there. And with the increasing demand for rigor, for transparency on sustainability data, and with the competencies existing in this partnership with digitalization, it would be an excellent opportunity to try and to find partnerships whereby you can conceptualize solutions for decarbonization, for example, try them out in some of the organizations that are members in the clusters, and try to put out there some marketable solutions, because there is market share to try and gain, right? It's a huge opportunity, and I think in this partnership there are the necessary skills and the necessary vision to try to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Natalia, and thank you all for being here with us and for bringing your own contribution to today's conversation. I will close today's session with my personal takeaway. It was very inspiring to see how important it is to create opportunities like this one, contexts where people meet and get to talk about heavy and challenging subjects, and how this empowers each of us, both as individuals and as part of our organizations, to keep going forward. So thank you for giving us the time, and I wish you all to spend some very nice winter holidays, and we look forward to see you next year with new updates and new activities. Thank you once again, Natalia, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Paula and
Thank
Natalia.
you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Paula, I'm gonna hang around just to say, like, that was a great webinar. Really good job.
Thank
You
you.
picked a really nice presenter.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that that you were with us, and I'm happy to receive your feedback. Thank you.
I'm happy to be able to support you in your ventures. Okay, have a great evening.
Thank you too. Bye bye.